Hey, welcome to the ReThink podcast. Glad that you take the time to join with us. Several of you join in every time we do one of these for some reason. We're
Now
glad to have you.
let's address what everybody's thinking right now because we have two
How do you know what everybody's
new
thinking?
hosts. I know our audience. There's two new hosts here, and they're asking themselves. Most podcasts would just mail it in with half the host crew gone, but not the ReThink podcast.
No.
We bring out the big guns, and so
Right.
Levi,
Well, we're
Ben,
a team.
Yeah,
We have interchangeable parts.
That's right.
We're all
Yes.
expendable, aren't we? We're all expendable,
Absolutely.
especially Matt and Andrew.
yeah. I was gonna say
Apparently.
some more than others. We're still here, but
I'll just replace Andrew today.
Matt's claiming to be on quarantine.
Claiming.
What the heck is that?
yeah.
Quarantine. And then Andrew, where's Andrew at?
Andrew is quarantining in Costa Rica, I think.
Yeah,
So
like a beach trip or
yeah,
something.
yeah. So
I saw they were recording content for the churches in Costa Rica to use.
yeah. I mean,
But
we
that-
can
that's
do
what
that.
we do
That's
here.
what we do here.
Oh,
You don't
yeah.
need to go
Why do you
across
need to
the
go to
world
Costa Rica?
to
Right.
exotic locations to do that. So
Sure.
whatever. We'll stay here and hold down the fort, guys.
Somebody has to work.
Yep.
Yep. Well, here we are. Glad you're here, Levi. Glad you're here, Ben. We don't really have a pattern to this. We just go. And so Ben and I are preaching this text this weekend. And actually, this is put out after we've preached it, right? So we're talking about what you said.
What we already
But
said?
you've recorded.
Okay.
You recorded the message,
Yeah.
so it's
Yeah.
legit for you. I haven't written it yet, but I did do the radio broadcast this morning. So I've thought about this passage, and it starts out with this is the message you've heard from the beginning. John writes in chapter 3, verse 11, that we should love one another. Nothing new here, right? But verse 12, he goes to the story of Cain killing Abel. So I went back to Genesis chapter 4, and I reread that story of Cain killing Abel. And I don't remember the graphicness of this. The new NIV puts it in there about, we used to say Adam knew Eve, and it was all sufficient because we knew what new meant. But now the new NIV has to be more graphic with it. But I'm not going to read that. It was enough embarrassment to read that on the radio. But to do it here, you'll be able to see my face turn red. He knew his wife. Let's
Yeah.
just put it that way.
Yeah.
He knew his wife. Knew her well. And she got pregnant. He knew her so well. And their firstborn is Cain. Proud parents. Wouldn't you think? I mean, Levi, word is that this is happening in your life, man.
First one. Yep. Coming in May.
Congrats.
So you knew your wife.
He does know her.
He knows his wife, and now she's
That's a
going
good
to have
thing.
a child.
Yeah.
We could go a lot of different directions, but let's hold
I
on.
wonder where you are going with that.
We were not going to go anywhere. Down into the cesspool. Here we go. So you're pretty excited.
Yeah. Yeah.
Having a baby.
A boy.
You know that already?
Yeah. Found out last week.
Holy cow.
Wow.
So
for you.
your firstborn son.
You gonna name him
Exactly.
Cain?
Probably not.
No, probably not. Yeah.
My cousin named his son Cain. I don't know if he knew the story or not.
Couldn't have known the story.
Holy cow. Your firstborn son. Pretty exciting, though. Isn't
Oh,
it?
yeah. Definitely.
You don't have any clue how exciting it is. It's just awesome. I've got
Yeah.
grandson number 2 born this
Yeah.
last week.
Nice.
Just as my wife is out there right now. Sweet. I get to see the pictures every morning. Beautiful. We have such pride in our kids, and it's pretty neat. I see yours, Becca's 4.
Beckett's 4, Bella's 6, Bennett's 1.5.
Did Beckett watch the Illini game last night?
Beckett stayed up for a little bit, but it started at 8:30, so we had a little bit of time to watch it, and then he was in bed, and I got to finish the game. So
Yeah. How many kids do you have, Ben?
I have 5 kids, and 2 grandkids now, and 1 on the way.
Yeah.
So it's pretty exciting around our place.
Pretty cool. Can you imagine if, as adults, one of your kids killed a sibling? Holy cow.
No.
Talk about a family nightmare.
Yeah.
The first family.
Yeah.
The first family. I don't know if this makes me feel good or this makes me feel like hopeless. I have 5 boys, okay?
Yeah.
The 3 older biological, on occasion, they would get into some real fights.
now, however, So I knew your kids growing up because your in-laws were from Sisney, where I'm from, and you would come down every once in a while. And Jansen was the scariest out of all. I mean,
Well, think about it.
they
She's
were
got
all rough,
3
but
older
Jansen
brothers.
was the one that
She's a brute.
yeah, she was the scariest. She was the meanest. But
We've always said that
yeah.
she, for a husband, is either going to have to get like, Bear Grylls, or somebody who's just awesomely tough, or he's going to have to be a total wimp
yeah.
and just surrender to everything to her. Yeah. Well, she had 3 older brothers who played no mercy with her. But my boys, I remember a couple of occasions, a Christmas dinner, where they got into a fist fight at the dinner table. Oh, what a meal. And one of them had a knife. They're fighting over a knife, a steak knife. Yeah, we got cuts and everything over that deal.
Wow.
But no murder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can
That's
you,
good.
I just can't imagine. This is the first family. You can't blame it on, television. You can't blame it on, they're hanging out with the other kids, and that's why, it's just
Your
it's
family
just crappy
history. You don't have any
Sure.
family history, so
crappy parenting.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
your family history is, you had one thing to do.
Yep.
Don't eat of that forbidden fruit, and they did.
Yeah.
I don't know. As a parent, I think about the story of the prodigal son, the father waiting for his prodigal to come back, and the passion you have for your kids to do what's right. And man, here we go. First story. I don't know. That all got me sidetracked, but I can't help but think about it, because parenting, when your kids do their thing, not God's thing, that's hard. That's really hard.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't know if this gives you hope, or it's not always your fault as a parent. It's not always your fault what your kids do.
Yeah.
And it may be their fault. They may have played into this, but wow. We should love one another. Don't do like this. So the first example is Cain, who belonged to the evil one and murdered his brother. So if you go back to Genesis 4, you read the story, it's like not just murder, it's premeditated. Come out to the field with me, Abel, younger brother. I don't know how much younger he was, but come out to the field with me and let me kill you. He didn't say that, but there's like I can't even fathom what that's like as a parent, what that's like as a family to go through that kind of thing. But he murdered him, right? Why did he murder him? Because his own actions were evil and his brothers were righteous. So it's about the sacrifice. Did you delve into that in the message?
Yeah, a little bit. And it's an important factor there, because he didn't kill him for reasons that Abel had nothing to do with aggravating Cain in any way. They weren't sibling rivals. It wasn't like they were, Abel wasn't doing anything to provoke it. It just, he did his job and Cain did his. And for whatever reason, Cain couldn't handle the success.
So Cain was a farmer. Abel was a livestock keeper.
Yes.
Right. Why is it that God liked Abel's sacrifice and not Cain's? Did you talk about that?
Not as much. We didn't really get into that. But Abel's, the word righteous is used in regard to Abel's sacrifice, that his was a one of righteousness versus Cain's that apparently fell short in whatever it was that God saw in it that he didn't appreciate.
Maybe it was not the first and the best.
Yes.
That's God asked for that. Maybe it's and the sacrifice of blood, of life,
Right.
is a priority.
Certainly not because Cain chose to be a farmer. It wasn't. Because we all have our own path, we all do our own thing. So it had nothing to do with the product that he raised. It had to do with maybe the way he sacrificed it. Or
His heart was obviously it says it belonged to Satan.
yeah,
I don't know if that's a postscript or that's the way he was living his life at the
Yeah.
time.
Right.
But his heart was definitely and God doesn't need the sacrifice. God didn't need the animal. God didn't need the grain. He wants us.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well-
somewhere along that's the story.
Yeah, because that's something in Genesis that I've always found interesting is after they offer the sacrifices and before Cain kills Abel, God, says to Cain, and asks him, why is he so angry? Why is he downcast? And then he says, if you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, the sin is crouching at your door and it desires to have you, but you must rule over it. And so, you definitely see that
It's a choice.
his
right.
heart.
Where are you going to go with that? I love that phrase, sin is crouching at your door.
It's a powerful image that, like, I know, I've seen it so many times in my life that sin is right there, but it's whether or not we choose to open the door and let sin in or rule over it.
And I think that's an important distinction to make because that is not specific to a person. We all have sin crouching at our door. We've, if you've been following the news in the church world, it just seems like one mega church pastor after another has fallen. And Carl Lentz was somebody who's very well known in the American church, and he's come out and been caught having an affair. And it's just a Hillsong Church, yeah, in New York City, and it's just a reminder that we're all because we in the church think how horrible that is, and I can't believe they would do something like that. But we're all one decision away from being in the same boat. We may not have the celebrity that he has, but we are just as many decisions away from being in that same boat. So I think that's an important distinction to make: is sin is crouching at all of our doors. But it's what we do with that.
Matt sent me the interview of the woman that he had the affair with.
Yeah.
And, how he hid even what he did from her for a while. And she, as a non-believer, as just a, woman in this world, had more morality, really, than he did in their conduct with each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the guy doing the interview, I think he said something powerful that you just alluded to there, Ben, was, what he did was wrong, and there, there's consequences for that. But be careful in the judgment, in the sense that if you say I would never do that, you're in danger.
Yeah.
Right? We're all in danger.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Be it that sin or some other sin. Sin is crouching at our door.
You're never more vulnerable to sin than when you think you aren't.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And we can all rationalize or justify whatever, but boom, you're down.
Yep.
And it's so interesting because if you think about it, God was giving him an out. God was saying, there's an opportunity for you to be redeemed here. That's not the language. Yeah, before you go and do something crazy. And it's for me, it's interesting. Something Levi said really kicked that off for me. He didn't hear, he could not have heard in his mind and in his heart, sin is crouching at your door. What he heard was, why can't you be like your brother? Mm-hmm. You have fallen short. That's what Satan convinced him that God was, and he wanted to eliminate the threat of the one that made him feel bad. It wasn't sin that he was opposing here. It was Abel.
And it wasn't himself.
It wasn't
not
himself.
Make a change in you.
Yes.
Let's change something else.
Yes.
Man, we do that.
Yeah. The truth of what God was trying to tell him would have saved lives, literally would have saved lives. And he heard something totally different.
Is totally, Adam and Eve do the justification thing with their sin.
Yeah.
The woman you put here, the serpent you put here, whatever, they caused me to do this. So we got the same thing going on with Cain. Because if you read on down to the story, to me it's ridiculous. After he kills his brother, God doles the punishment to him. He's going to be a wanderer and marked for the rest of his life. And he says, that's too great a punishment for me to bear. I'm thinking, dude, you just killed your brother.
Right.
Why didn't God just hammer you?
Right.
Yep.
So you're whining now that you're going to be a wanderer. And how often is it that we make choices, we sin, we determine we're going to do something, and then, oh, woe is me, because I got caught.
Yep.
Right.
So the way John writes is kind of this cyclical format, and he's always comparing and contrasting different things. So you've got light and darkness, you've got hatred and love, which is where we're at right now. And so he goes on the heels of, in chapter 3, 1 through 10, talking about these are who the children of God are, and these are who the children of the devil are. And he keeps going back. So he talks around these things. And sometimes it's hard to preach because you do feel like you're continually talking about the same thing, but this is how John is writing. He's bringing you back by comparing and contrasting to the main point. And he's going to go down after he lays out about Cain, and he's going to move down into talking about Jesus. And so you've got the hatred element with Cain's story, and now you've got the love element with Jesus. And so let's talk about that just a little bit. Because I think there's some important distinctions to make when we talk about love, because that is very, very popular in Western Christianity. That is that's the big attribute of God that we really like to focus on, but that's not it.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting you said that, because that was a lot of the focus of the reading that I did for this week's sermon. In verse 14, he says, we know that we have passed from death to life. There's that contrasting of things again, from death to life. And the way we know that, is the marker of that is that we love one another. So the contrast of death to life has to do with not hating and loving.
Yeah.
And so it's a total switch of who we are and what God has brought us from and now to. I love Paul's imagery in chapter 2 of Ephesians, where he says, you were once far away. You were an alien. You were set apart, and now you have been brought near. You're no longer an alien, but an adopted son. And that for the person seeking something different than what life has provided for them over the last however long in their life, that's a blessing. That's something I would want to grasp and hold on to.
One of the things I noted as I worked on down through this passage in regards to what you're saying there, Ben, is, okay, we start out with the example of Cain, which is murder, and we could, most all of us can say, well, I never did that, right? Yeah. And then he does what Jesus does in verses 13, 14, 15, and talks about hatred. So you haven't murdered, but you've hated. Jesus said it that way. You didn't, kill, but you hate your brother. You didn't commit adultery, but you've looked lustfully. Yeah. So Jesus takes the step of, if we're going to be covenant keepers in the new kingdom, we've got to consider the heart issue of things, what's going on the inside, not just that external conduct. Yeah, right. The truth of the matter is, most of our external conduct problems or affairs or lashing out at people would have never happened if we'd have fixed the heart to start with. Mm-hmm. Right. So that's the sin is crouching at your door. Fix the heart. But then, if you follow it on down, it goes beyond the action externally, kill, the heart, hatred. And when he talks about in verse 16, he's talking about the love of Jesus, right? Yeah. The example of Jesus. And he says, indifference. Not only is it the action, the heart, but it's not enough just to not have the negative, but what are you going to do positive here?
Right.
Yeah. And his example, of course, is Christ, who laid down his life for us. But it's not enough just to say, I love you, or I don't hate you. Yep. But what are you showing?
Yep.
Yep. You got possessions, you got stuff, you see a need, if you don't have pity, is that really love? No.
Right. Yeah, and he even specifically says, let us not love with words or speech, but with our actions and our truth. So that really literally defines what you just said. It's not enough to just say what we mean. We got to mean what we say and do it. Yeah. Live it out.
Well, I think we have almost taken this idea of, back in chapter, or earlier on in chapter 3, when it's talking about who are children of the devil and who are children of God. That's a hard phrase to wrestle with yourself, because one of the things I said last week in my sermon was, there's something that bristles inside of us when you talk about people being children of the devil, because, what's the natural response? Well, no, I'm a good person, or I'm a nice person. Well, and I think where I went with that, kind of facetiously, but it's true, is, okay, well, then you're a nice child of the devil.
Yeah.
Because...
who masquerades as an angel of light.
Right. Yeah, it's not... Yeah. You can't do enough. And again, this is who John is writing to. We've talked before in previous podcasts that John's writing to a church that is either so bent on legalism or just do whatever you want anyways because the physical body is sin and it's passing away, and Jesus is just going to make it all right. But we have to make sure that we understand that you can't do enough. You cannot do enough to earn it. And so whether you're a good person, well, I don't think you're probably using the right standard, but that's not enough. And so that's hard for us to hear, but then we get to where John is going, and he's saying, hey, this isn't, it's more of a hard issue, and so when you look at that, you realize you don't measure up.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's verse 19, really.
Yeah.
This is how we know that you're a Greek expert, aren't you?
Gnosis. Used to be.
Speaks it all the time.
We had to pass it in years ago gone Gnosis, that idea of coming to know. This is how you have come to know that you belong to the truth.
Yeah.
Your heart is at rest in the presence of God. You got peace with God. You got peace in your relationship with God. You know that, he says, because of this love you have, it comes through Christ, right? To believe in the name of the Son. So what you're saying there, Ben, is we come to this every week, and we do it on purpose. We talk about the essence of the gospel is that we're lost, and he sought us and brought us his Son. And so our salvation comes to believe in the name of the Son. Yep. It's through Christ. It's not because we've learned to treat people with great benevolent hearts. Yep. Or that we didn't hate or we don't kill. But we don't kill, we don't hate, and we treat with love because we have been redeemed.
Right.
Yep. And we have peace because we've been redeemed.
Yeah, I like where John has started back in chapter 3 of saying that I'm writing this so that you can stand with confidence in front of God. You can stand unashamed. Well, the only way you're going to do that is by believing in Jesus. Jesus is the only thing that causes confidence in standing in the Father. It's not what you've done. It's not how nice you are, how loving you are. It is only him, because the standard is perfection. And when that is the standard, not just how nice you are, when perfection is the standard, you realize, ooh, I don't meet that myself.
Right. So you talked a lot about love and the American Christian culture of, that's the chief characteristic of God, all those things. Yeah. Just love people. It'll be okay. We belong to the truth, which is a right or wrong issue. But our relationship is not based upon how well we treat other people. It's based upon we're saved through Christ.
Right.
We treat other people with the same love we have from him because we are saved by Christ.
Here's the problem with the phrase God is love, because, man, that is everywhere in Western Christianity. And it's true. However, I don't think we're using it rightly by saying God is love in our Western culture. And this is a Mark Driscoll quote, and it was one of those like, man, I wish I would have thought of that. But by saying God is love, what we're really saying is love is God. And when you get that backwards and love and the feelings and the emotions are God and they're guiding you, you're missing every other aspect of God. You're missing, because yes, he is love, but that's a piece of his nature. He's perfect in that, but he's also jealous. He's also holy. He also has wrath. And when you just focus on love, what we're really saying is, I just want God to accept everything, my sin and all. And that's not who he is, because if he accepts that, then he's no longer holy. If he allows sin, he's no longer holy. If he's no longer holy, he's no longer good. If he's no longer good, then Jesus came for no reason, and we're to be pitied.
Right.
Go back and look at what he did to Cain. He drove him out.
Yeah.
Right? Gave him a severe punishment. That's God. He's just.
Yep.
Yeah. Anything else you want to highlight? We're missing something else as we rethink?
I think the last part of the text for this week is really good. Is one of those things that, again, you emphasize, but he talks about the confidence we have before God. There's a lot. I think there's a huge segment of Christian folks that just come to church every week who, I think if you got right down to it and asked them, are you going to heaven? They would balk at knowing whether they are or aren't. Mm-hmm. And John says there has to be an assurance and a confidence that the life you're living is one that pleases God, because you have faith in him. You've expressed your faith in him, and because of your faith in him, you now have salvation. Mm-hmm. And as we live that out and serve, we can know that the reason why we're serving is just exactly what you said. The reason we serve is because we know that we have been served. We have been redeemed. And I think the everyday Christian person walking around has more doubt and more unassurance. That's not a word, but the lack of confidence, not knowing that God has assured that for them. And that's a message I think is really important for us to emphasize as often as we can. Yeah. Jesus died, and that's it, period. Believe in that. And John says in his gospel, believe and you will be saved. And I think we root our confidence in an experience. Mm-hmm. Because you hear people talk about, well, I was baptized on, or I
I prayed at such and such an event, or I felt the presence of God, and that's that moment when I accepted Him. And we root it in our experience. And I think our peace, our hope, our assurance is rooted in an event.
Yeah.
But it's not about us. It's about the event of the cross.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And so my event of accepting that isn't the key to the story.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
it's the story that's the key.
Right.
Right? Because my event's not trustworthy.
Yep.
So I've talked to a lot of people. Well, I was baptized because Mom made me do it, or you know what? I went forward with a bunch of people, and I think I just did it for social pressure or whatever. And I understand all that.
Yeah.
But so we're rebaptized or we'll do whatever. But we run the risk of tying it to an event in our life where what we did, we followed the protocol. That gives us the assurance. No, the assurance comes from He came after me, and I believe that.
Yeah.
He gave Himself for me.
Like putting yourself in the position of being David, defeating Goliath, the big mean monster in front of me. I'm the victor. You're not the victor at all. God's the victor, and God may have used you to accomplish a thing, but God brought the victory. Mm-hmm. And we sometimes do that. And if you do that very often, and you realize the next time you mess up, the next time you fall short or fail in any way, you start to worry that you're not
Right.
what God has called you to be. But it's because you put a false sense of security in your own self rather than in the cross.
That's the flip side of the emotional response too, where Paul does that in Romans 7. Because if it is about my response and my well, then why do I do what I don't want to do, and why am I not doing what I'm supposed to be doing?
Yes.
What a wretched sinning man I am.
Yeah.
Chief of all sinners, he says in Romans 7.
Yep.
But then he concludes by saying, "But praise be to God, the victory comes through Jesus Christ our Lord."
Yes.
And he talks in all of chapter 8 about there is nothing that can be a conqueror because of this life I have in the Spirit.
Yep.
Right? So it's not about my wrestlings and victory over, because I think that's where a lot of folks are at too.
Yeah.
They just know they're not that, what would be the Bible word? Sanctified. We don't live that sanctified, set apart sometimes.
Yeah.
We look like our neighbors. We act like our neighbors too much. And we know it. And we know our heart.
Yeah.
Right? We know what happens in secret. And we go, well, how could I be redeemed? Well, I'm not redeemed by me. I have been redeemed by Him.
Yeah, and he even says that right at the very end. The one who keeps God's commands lives in him, and he in them, and this is how we know that he lives in us, is by the Spirit that he gave us.
Right. Well, a lot to rethink here. John wants people to know, to really know, not based upon themselves. It's not cocky and arrogant, but to humbly know. Yep. I've been saved.
Yeah.
Wow. Hey, thanks for taking the time to join us on the Rethink. We're